Now there's something really special about floating trem systems. It takes the guitar, which is a very expressive instrument, and makes it even more expressive. The ability to raise the pitch by, taking your bridge and bending it up, or lowering the pitch by taking the bridge and diving it down, gives you a ton of different articulation options. And whether you just want to use it for some slight coloring or do some insane whammy tricks, the floating bridge enables it all. Now, along with the advantage of free expression on a floating system, there are some notable downsides as well. Number one, well, if you break a string, your guitar is instantly going to go horribly out of tune. And if you're playing live, well, you can't even survive to the end of the song. Your guitar will be so out of tune, it's basically unplayable. And I think that's a big deal for a lot of people. Number two, changing tunings is a nightmare. As soon as you make an adjustment on any of the strings, even if you go half step or drop D or something like that, common tunings, the whole bridge will readjust as you change the tension on the strings. And again, the whole thing will go out of tune. So you have to, make your adjustments, tune up, make your adjustments, tune up, multiple times until you get it perfectly in tune. And if you want to go back, you have to do the whole thing all over again. So these are not guitars that you want to switch in between tunings very often. Number three, well, changing strings is a pain in the butt, especially if you want to do a deep clean on your fingerboard or body and you want to remove all the strings. Well, the bridge is going to pull back, probably fall off the two posts and become a whole thing. So most people will, just change one string at a time. So, yeah, it just becomes a little bit more complex. Same thing for like little adjustments. As soon as you adjust one string, even the action up and down or intonation forward and back, again, it affects the whole system and you have to go through it all over again. And, even if you're wanting to do heavy riffs or really dig into your guitar, if you play floating bridges hard, well, they usually will just fluctuate a little bit as you dig in, and that really heavy riff suddenly has a weird warble to it. Or if you just like hit a chord really hard, you'll get that little flutter from the bridge. So there's a few things, that you need to know about floating systems. Now, what we're going to look at today is this. Now, this is supposed to give you the best of both worlds between floating and decked. All right, so here it is. This is the FZG trem switch. So according to these guys, it gives you the best of both worlds between decked and floating. It's a very, simplistic approach to a common problem. So we'll see if it works. They sent a couple of these into the channel, so I'm going to install them on two different guitars. But basically the premise is this. When the plunger's back like this, your guitar is fully floating. So, all your trem tricks, all your flutters, everything is good to go. And when you want to deck it, well, you pull up the switch, push the plunger forward, lock it in, and it blocks off your trem. So again, we'll show it in the real world here in a second, but that's the concept. There's kind of two locking points. So, if you want to go drop D, you just block off your trem block, do your alternate tunings. Everything's cool. When you want to go full floating, you just pull it up, push it back, and now your trem block can, go freely. Or again, if you're free floating and you break a string, well, you can quickly go like this, block off your trem block, and you will remain in tune, and you can survive till the end of that song or whatever, and change your strings or switch guitars. So that's the concept. Basically, a really quick and instant way to change from being blocked to going floating. Let's install it on a guitar. Now, first up, let's put the trem switch on a Strat. Now, Strats come from the factory with the bridge floated off the body. So let's install it and see if it'll hold tune, as we drop tune, maybe even, simulate breaking a string, see how well this thing works. So here's the process to installing the trem switch. Now, if you only have two springs, put it dead center. If you've got three, like on this Strat, well, put it on the bass side strings. Now, what you want to do is kind of just bring it right to the edge of the cavity. And as you can see, the plunger is back and the guitar will be fully floating, bending up, bending down, flutters, all that kind of stuff. And then when you want to, go to a blocked system, you just move the plunger forward like so. I showed you guys this little mechanism before. And then of course it will contact the block like so. And yeah, just stabilize the whole system. So that's the idea. Now to actually install it, what you need to do is pull the plunger kind of adjuster out like so. There we go. And then when you move it back into kind of like the floating configuration, it exposes the mounting screw. So that's what you need to do. Mount it like so, which we will do in a second, and then put your adjuster back in and kind of dial it in so it contacts the block perfectly. So there we go. We're going to mark off the holes, put our screws in. We'll be right back. All right, so let's try this out in the real world. So the trem switch is off, which means it's fully floating. I can, bend up, bend down. You can do all your flutters, everything that you would like to do on a fully floating system. Now, the big question is, well, what happens when we lock it? So we're going to take the trem switch and lock it. Now this does take a little bit of adjusting to get it perfect. So now it should be exactly in tune, but I can't bend the bar up. The bar is locked now. So it's like a dive only system. But you'll notice it's exactly in tune the same way floating or decked. Either way it's perfectly in tune. So that takes a little bit of adjustment to get it perfectly precise like that. But once you're there, it should allow you to do the things that a fully floating system can't. And that's, I guess, why it's built to be, the best of both worlds. So now if I go down to drop D here, there you go. The guitar is still in tune. And again, you can still dive and do all that stuff. But yeah, we're drop D and in tune. Now what happens, let's say, if we broke a string? Now, on a floating system, it's going to put your guitar out. Let's kind of simulate that here. So I'm going to take my 4th string and I think let's just take it right off. So I'm going to lower it. Here we go. And then I've got locking tuners on here. So I'm just going to release the lock. So it's already super floppy. And let's just pull it right out. Where is it here? If I can get a handle on it here. There we go. So 4th string is right off. Let's just dangle it there. Now we still should be in tune. So I'm going to still play some D stuff since we're in drop D. And we've broken a string. Not bad. Like enough to get you through the rest of the song, right? So not perfect, but again, let's say that happened on a floating system. So I'm going to take this and disengage the system. So we're going to go back to our floating setup. So no, you can see the switch is disengaged. Now let's see what would happen if you were in that same situation and you broke a string. I'll play that D chord again. That's no fooling. That's what your guitar would sound like, if you broke that string. Now, one thing to note is it's not going to work on every guitar. So I wanted to put it on my Ibanez, but when I opened up the back cavity, because of the Ibanez proprietary system, you can see there's just no room for the switch there at all. So it's not going to work on a guitar like this. But if you have a Floyd Rose equipped guitar, just pull the back cavity off and just verify that there's room for the switch. So I ended up putting it on the Cort, and it works just as well as it did on the Strat. So here are my final thoughts on the trem switch. Does it do what they claim it will do? Well, for the most part, yes. It's a little finicky to get set up perfect, but once it's there, it's pretty amazing. Drop D, in tune. Break a string, in tune. If you want to do maintenance, pull all your strings off, your block will stay exactly where you had it before. You clean your guitar, restring it up, and you're ready to go. So it does have some advantages, and if you're used to playing a floating guitar, it's a nice little safety backup, just in the back of your mind. If I break a string, I can quickly engage it and I'll be okay. Or, for this song, I want something a little bit more stable for riffing. I don't want my trem fluttering. Engage it and you can do some heavy riffs and that kind of stuff. So I think if you're a Floyd Rose user, it's going to be awesome for you. And the only downside is it's a little, you got to take your time setting it up. That's it. Once it's there, it's super easy to use. Just pop it up, slide it, engage, and you're off to the races. So overall, pretty impressed with it. It's a simple solution to a more complex problem, which is pretty cool. So anyway, I will link to the guys in the video description below. You can check out, the trem switch there. Other than that, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, subscribe to the channel. Other than that, have yourself a great day.